What up, fam? Today I got a race recap video of the 2022 San Jose Half Marathon where I ran 108.50-ish and change. Official results aren't out yet. I'm going to go over what went down, and I would definitely say it wasn't my best race. Conditions were favorable. I just had a poor execution and the wheels fell off a little past halfway, and now I got 2 months left to train for the California International Marathon. I'm going to go over my splits, how the race went down, how I felt, the funny stuff that happened before the race, and yeah, so smash that like button and leave a comment down below about anything, because all those things really help the video and the channel. So let's get to it. Leading up into the race, stomach-wise, I wasn't feeling that great, but by the time the race came around, I felt okay. I had a gel about 20 minutes before the start and a caffeinated gel at about 6 miles in of Morton 100. I wore the Alpha Fly Next Percent 2s because that's what I plan on running the California International Marathon in, and I wore the same pair that I plan on wearing for the marathon itself. Definitely ended up with a bloody toe. Probably should have broke him in a little bit, but whatever. The race was supposed to start at 8 o'clock, I believe, with the wheelchair athletes, but the problem was that apparently there were cars being broken into along the course. So the race actually did not start till probably around 8:10. So we were standing in that area. Any thwarts of warming up was pretty much put to waste after doing strides and stuff like that. So we pretty much ran from adrenaline and how we felt. So I definitely got what they call a second wind, where if you're not properly warmed up and you run hard, although I did start what I felt like was comfortably hard, I definitely felt some heaviness in my arms within the first mile, but I maintained the pace for a little bit before settling into a pack, and then eventually that pack broke up. But so I'm gonna go over my splits and how I felt. So I went through the first mile, guys, give or take, that the splits on my watch versus the splits on the course may be a little off. There were times where I split manu split, and there were times where I had auto split on, where it split maybe a little bit before, like a good amount before, like 10-20 seconds before, or a little bit after, or maybe right on. So ballpark it, maybe plus or minus 5 seconds or so, maybe even less than that. But my watch split me at 5:02 for the first mile, still feeling good. 5 flat for the second mile, still feeling good, still with the pack. 4:57 for the third mile, 5:03 for the fourth mile, and then 5:11 for the fifth mile. Now keep in mind, I believe the first 3 to 4 miles of this course were all downhill, like a good 8 to 15 feet. So obviously the perceived exertion of what you're running. My goal was to maybe go out in 5:05 and see how I can hold that for a while. That would put me in about 106 half marathon shape-ish, 106 high, which I believe I'm in that kind of shape. So equivalent wise, I know it sounds fast, but I do believe I could have held 5:05. But given the fact that when there's a down, there's also an up, I should have taken that into consideration. So mile 5, 5:11, mile 6, 5:08. I went through 6 miles in about 30:20, 30:25. There wasn't a 10K mat, but my watch had me in about 31:25-ish. So still feeling pretty good, felt pretty strong. But the net uphill, or the uphill portion for the second half of the race started to come, or kind of rolling. Mile 6, 5:08, mile 7, 5:17, mile 8, 5:19, mile 9, 5:28. Don't really know what happened there. Maybe I lost focus. At this point, I was in no man's land. I kind of just like grinding away and keeping track of doing the math in my head while I was running. When I went through, 6.55 miles, I told myself that if I would have ran, I believe it was like 33:12, I went through 6.55 by my watch. So I was like, okay, if I run the same second half, I'll run 106.24. But obviously that didn't happen. Mile 9, like I said, 5:28, net elevation gain of 9 feet. Don't know what happened there. Maybe I just lost focus. I wouldn't say my legs necessarily got tired. Or maybe it's cumulative fatigue for the fact that I've had at least, 7 or 8 weeks of 100-mile weeks under my belt. I did have a down week this week leading into the race, so my legs were somewhat fresher, but I definitely would say that the traveling and sleeping in a different bed than I'm used to, and my diet leading up into the race was probably a little less than ideal, which probably affected, you know, how I felt. I did have that stress sweat. I did feel anxious, and my muscles did feel a little tight, kind of like when you are anxious when it comes to like pre-race anxiety, but I kind of loosened up. And as I know, it does take me a while, given that I'm in my early 30s now, to get into the groove. So that 10-minute delay at the start probably hurt me a little bit. It probably hurt others as well, but it definitely took me a little bit for that, what I call dread second wind, to kind of like level out and to get into a groove, probably by about mile 3. But that 10K split was the fastest I've ever gone through a half, which I'm proud of myself with that. Mile 10, 5:16, mile 11, 5:23, mile 12, 5:24, mile 13, 5:22, and the last 0.1, given some error with the GPS watches, I ran, you know, 13.26 miles with the last 0.2 at 5:03 pace. Overall, a good course. Overall, a fast course. I would recommend doing it again, or I would do it again, and I do believe it is the Rock and Roll Series fastest course. I have a lot of friends that have PRs in this course, but today just wasn't my day. Probably should have gone out a little more conservative. Maybe 5:10 would have been the day today to run 5:10, which still would have been a PR for me. My PR is 1:08:23, and I believe this is either my 3rd or 4th fastest half marathon. Now the goals for the full marathon, I mean, it could be a little bummer looking at this now that the OTQ, or the Olympic Trials qualifier standard for men in the US, is sub 2:18. So basically I need to run what I ran today, another half. And I do believe I'm a lot more distance oriented, and I do believe I really need to work on my discipline when it comes to races. We all make mistakes, but I'm at this point in my life where I should stop making these mistakes. Although, then again, I don't race as much as I used to. So when I do race, I want to do well. I want to PR. I mean, I look at a lot of data. There's all this data out there you could pay attention to: heart rate, power, perceived exertion, different apps you can use like Trackster and Strava that can show you how you're performing and what your equivalent performances may be. So I went out and how I felt, and I went out in a way that I think I could have done well. And today just wasn't my day for the second half of the race. I got 2 months left to train for the California International Marathon. I'm gonna bump up the mileage, work on fueling, work on my diet a little bit so I don't get any gastric upset, because I do fear getting some gastric upset when it comes to race day come the marathon. But again, the goal is OTQ, and there will be a lot of guys out there that I can ride the pain train with to hopefully hit that standard. But yeah, just gotta keep grinding, just gotta keep training, always stay spicy. Fam, like the video. If you guys like this video, watch this video next. Like, share, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell for when I post my next video. Love you all, catch you guys next time, peace. Oh, and also congrats to all those that ran Chicago this year. Pretty spicy out there. Later.